What would you do if someone tried to destroy your marriage using fabricated evidence so convincing that even you began to doubt yourself? When 26-year-old Dina Brown married software engineer Marcus Rivera in the spring of 2023, she thought she had found her perfect match. But lurking in the shadows of their happiness was someone willing to go to unthinkable lengths to tear them apart. This is the true story of how one woman's obsession led to an elaborate scheme involving fake text messages, manipulated phone records, and a web of lies so intricate it nearly destroyed an innocent marriage. What Dina discovered about the lengths people will go to for revenge will shock you, and how the truth finally came to light will restore your faith in justice.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dina Brown had always been the type of person who believed in fairy tale endings. At 26, with her warm brown eyes and infectious laugh, she worked as a pediatric nurse at Children's Medical Center in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. Her days were filled with caring for sick children and comforting worried parents, a job that had taught her to see the good in people, even during their darkest moments. This natural optimism is what first attracted Marcus Rivera to her when they met at a friend's barbecue in Tempe 2 years earlier. Marcus, 29, was everything Dina hadn't known she was looking for. A senior software developer at a growing tech startup called Innovate Tech Solutions, he possessed a quiet intelligence and gentle humor that perfectly balanced Dina's more outgoing personality. Where she was impulsive and emotional, he was thoughtful and analytical. Where he sometimes got lost in technical details, she brought him back to the human element of life. Their relationship had progressed naturally from friendship to love, built on a foundation of genuine respect and shared values. Their small apartment in Scottsdale reflected both their personalities perfectly. Dina's nursing textbooks shared shelf space with Marcus's programming manuals. Her collection of succulent plants thrived on the sunny windowsills, while his neat desk setup with dual monitors occupied one corner of their living room. The walls were covered with photos from their hiking adventures in the Arizona desert, weekend trips to Sedona, and pictures from their modest but joyful wedding ceremony at the Desert Botanical Garden. The wedding itself had been a perfect reflection of who they were as a couple. With only 40 guests present, including both sets of parents, Marcus's younger sister, Elena, and their closest friends, the ceremony focused on their commitment rather than elaborate displays. Dina wore her grandmother's pearl necklace with a simple but elegant dress from a local boutique, while Marcus looked handsome in his navy suit. The reception featured a playlist they had created together over months, filled with songs that marked important moments in their relationship. What made their relationship particularly special was how they had navigated the usual challenges that face young couples. When Dina worked double shifts during flu season, Marcus would have her favorite Thai takeout waiting when she got home. When Marcus faced a particularly stressful project deadline, Dina would give him space to focus while quietly handling all the household tasks. They had learned to communicate openly about everything from finances to future dreams, building the kind of trust that seemed unshakable. Dina's work at the hospital had taught her to read people quickly and accurately. She could spot a parent who was hiding their fear, a child who was in more pain than they were admitting, or a colleague who was struggling with personal issues. This skill served her well in her marriage, too. She could tell when Marcus needed encouragement about a work project, when he was worried about his parents' health, or when he simply needed quiet companionship while he worked through a problem. Marcus, for his part, brought stability and security to their relationship that Dina had never experienced before. His methodical approach to life complemented her spontaneous nature perfectly. When she suggested impromptu weekend trips, he would quickly research the best routes and book accommodations.
When she worried about their budget, he would sit down with her and create detailed spreadsheets that showed exactly where their money was going and how they could save for their goals.
Their daily routine had settled into a comfortable rhythm by the spring of 2024. Dina typically worked 3 12-hour shifts per week, which meant she had long days followed by several days off. On her work days, Marcus would wake up early to make her coffee and pack her lunch, even though his own workday didn't start until later. On her days off, she would often surprise him with homemade lunches delivered to his office, brightening not just his day, but earning her popularity among his coworkers, who had grown fond of her warm personality. Their social circle consisted mainly of other young professional couples. There were weekend game nights at their friends' houses, group hiking trips to explore Arizona's beautiful desert landscapes, and casual dinners where everyone took turns cooking. Dina particularly enjoyed hosting these gatherings, finding joy in bringing people together and creating the kind of warm, welcoming atmosphere that had been missing from her own somewhat chaotic childhood. The apartment they shared told the story of two lives gradually intertwining. Marcus's bookshelf, once filled only with technical manuals and science fiction novels, now included several books on child psychology that Dina had recommended to help him understand her work better. Dina's previously all-pink bedroom had evolved into a space that reflected both their tastes, with soft colors and comfortable furniture that Marcus had carefully researched for the best combination of style and practicality. Their financial situation was stable and improving steadily. Dina's nursing salary provided a solid foundation, while Marcus's income from the tech startup was growing as the company expanded. They had started saving for a house, dreaming of a place with a yard where they could eventually raise the children they both wanted. Every month, they would sit together at their small dining table, reviewing their budget and celebrating each milestone toward their goal. The trust between them was absolute. They shared passwords to their phones and social media accounts, not out of suspicion, but simply because they had nothing to hide from each other. When Dina received messages from former patients' families thanking her for her care, Marcus would read them with pride. When Marcus got recognition at work or solved a particularly challenging coding problem, Dina would be his first call to share the news. Their communication style had evolved into something uniquely their own. They had learned to discuss disagreements calmly and rationally, with Marcus's analytical nature helping to diffuse Dina's occasional emotional reactions, while her empathy helped him consider perspectives he might otherwise miss. They had established traditions and inside jokes that strengthened their bond, from their Sunday morning pancake breakfasts to their habit of texting each other funny memes during their respective workdays. Looking back, this period of their marriage represented everything that made their relationship strong. They were building something real and lasting, based on mutual respect, shared goals, and genuine affection. Their love wasn't the dramatic, turbulent kind portrayed in movies, but rather the steady, nurturing kind that creates a safe haven in an uncertain world. Neither of them had any reason to suspect that someone was watching their happiness with growing resentment, studying their routines and looking for ways to destroy what they had built together. In their contentment and trust, they had created what appeared to be the perfect life. But perfection, as they were about to learn, can make some people desperately jealous, and jealousy can drive people to actions that seem impossible to imagine. As March 2024 began, Dina was looking forward to their first wedding anniversary in June. She had already started secretly planning a surprise weekend getaway to San Diego, where they had spent a memorable vacation during their engagement. She was excited about their future together, confident in their love, and blissfully unaware that someone from Marcus's past was already putting into motion a plan that would test everything they had built together. The foundation of their relationship seemed solid enough to weather any storm. Soon, however, they would discover just how much damage one person's obsession could inflict, and how quickly a perfect life could spiral into a nightmare of doubt, suspicion, and betrayal. But that storm was still gathering strength, and for now, Dina Brown was simply a happy newlywed, secure in her marriage and optimistic about the future.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in late March 2024, though Dina wouldn't recognize it as significant until much later. She was getting ready for her shift at the hospital when Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message while he was in the shower. Normally, she wouldn't have given it a second thought, but the preview on his lock screen showed a name that made her pause: Veronica Hayes. Veronica Hayes. Marcus had mentioned her exactly once during their entire relationship, and only when Dina had specifically asked about his dating history. She was his ex-girlfriend from college, someone he had dated for about 8 months during his junior year at Arizona State University. According to Marcus, their relationship had ended amicably when Veronica transferred to UCLA to finish her communications degree. That had been over 6 years ago, and Marcus had made it clear that they hadn't stayed in touch. The message preview simply read, "Hey Marcus, hope you're doing well. I'm back in..." But the rest was cut off. Dina felt a small knot form in her stomach, though she couldn't quite explain why. Marcus had never given her any reason to doubt his faithfulness, and she trusted him completely. Still, something about receiving a message from an ex-girlfriend after years of silence felt odd. When Marcus emerged from the bathroom, toweling his dark hair dry, Dina mentioned the text casually. "Your phone buzzed while you were in the shower. Someone named Veronica?" Marcus's expression shifted slightly, a brief flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossing his face before settling back into his usual calm demeanor. "Veronica Hayes? That's weird. I haven't heard from her in years." He picked up his phone and read the full message, his brow furrowing slightly. "She says she's back in Phoenix for work and wondering if I'd like to catch up sometime." "What are you going to do?" Dina asked, trying to keep her voice neutral while she applied her lip balm in the mirror. "Nothing, probably. That relationship is ancient history. Besides, it would be weird to meet up with an ex when I'm married now." He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "You know you're the only woman I want to have coffee with, right?" Dina smiled, feeling somewhat reassured by his response and the warmth in his voice. She leaned back against his chest, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne. "I know. I trust you completely. It just caught me off guard, I guess." "I get it," Marcus said, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. "If some random ex of yours suddenly texted you out of the blue, I'd probably feel a little weird about it too. It's completely natural." They went about their morning routine as usual, but throughout her shift at the hospital, Dina found herself thinking about Veronica Hayes more than she cared to admit. During her lunch break, she did something she had never done before in their relationship. She looked up Marcus's ex-girlfriend on social media. What she found made the knot in her stomach tighten considerably. Veronica Hayes was stunning in a way that made Dina suddenly feel very ordinary. Her Instagram profile showed a woman with platinum blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and the kind of polished, glamorous look that suggested significant time and money spent on appearance. She was clearly successful, judging by the photos of her in expensive-looking business attire and high-end restaurants. Her bio indicated she was a marketing executive for a major entertainment company based in Los Angeles. But what disturbed Dina most was the dates on some of the Phoenix-tagged photos. Veronica hadn't just recently arrived in Phoenix for work, as her message had implied. She had been posting pictures from various Phoenix locations for over 2 weeks. The Camelback Mountain hiking trail, the rooftop bar at the Phoenician Resort, several trendy restaurants in Old Town Scottsdale. She had been in town for a while, which meant her message to Marcus hadn't been spontaneous at all. Dina closed the app quickly, feeling guilty for snooping and annoyed at herself for letting jealousy get the better of her rational mind. She had never been the suspicious type, and she didn't want to start now. Marcus had been completely honest about the message and his intentions. She had no reason to doubt him. That evening, when she got home from work, Marcus was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her favorite pasta dish with homemade marinara sauce. The smell of garlic and basil filled their apartment, and soft jazz played from his Spotify playlist. It was exactly the kind of thoughtful gesture that reminded her why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. "How was your day?" he asked, as he did every day when she came home from work. He wiped his hands on a kitchen towel and came over to give her a proper hello kiss. "Long,"
she said, meaning it in more ways than one. Mrs. Patterson's little boy had to go back into surgery, and we had 2 new admissions in the PICU. How about you? Any more messages from your mysterious ex?
Marcus shook his head, stirring the sauce with a wooden spoon. Nope, I actually blocked her number after lunch. I figured it was cleaner that way. No awkward follow-up messages or anything. Dina felt a wave of relief wash over her. You blocked her? Yeah, Marcus said, glancing at her with a slight smile. I thought about what you said this morning about it being weird, and you were right. There's really no good reason for me to stay in touch with someone I dated 6 years ago. Besides, I could tell it bothered you, even though you were trying to be cool about it. It did bother me a little, Dina admitted, feeling somewhat embarrassed. I looked her up on Instagram during my lunch break. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but didn't look upset. And she's basically a supermodel who apparently makes more money than both of us combined, Dina said with a rueful laugh. I felt pretty stupid for being jealous, but there it is. Marcus turned off the burner and faced her fully, his expression serious but kind. Dina, listen to me. I don't care if she looks like a movie star or makes $1 million a year. I chose you. I married you. You're the person I want to come home to every day, the person I want to build a life with. Some random ex from college could never change that. The sincerity in his voice made Dina's eyes water slightly. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him down for a kiss. I love you too, and I'm sorry for being weird about this. You weren't being weird, you were being human. And honestly, it's kind of nice to know that you care enough to feel a little jealous sometimes. They had dinner together on their small balcony, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The conversation flowed naturally between work stories, weekend plans, and their ongoing house hunting discussions. Dina felt completely at peace again, her earlier anxiety dissolved by Marcus's reassuring words and actions. Over the next few days, life returned to its normal rhythm. Dina worked her shifts at the hospital, Marcus tackled a challenging new project at work, and they fell back into their comfortable routines. The Veronica Hayes incident became just a minor blip in their otherwise smooth relationship, something they occasionally referenced with gentle humor. At least you didn't marry someone who gets jealous of your plant growths, Dina joked one evening when Marcus spent an unusually long time watering her succulents. Give it time, Marcus replied with a grin. I'm pretty sure that philodendron has been giving me dirty looks. But 3 weeks after that first text message, on a Thursday evening in mid-April, something happened that would shatter their peaceful world entirely. Dina was working a wait shift that wouldn't end until midnight, while Marcus was at home ostensibly working on a freelance web development project he had taken on to help boost their house down payment fund. At 9:47 p.m., Dina's phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. The message contained a single image attachment and a brief note. Thought you should know what your husband is really doing tonight. The image showed Marcus and a blonde woman sitting very close together in what appeared to be an intimate restaurant booth. The woman was leaning toward him with her hand on his arm, and Marcus appeared to be smiling at something she was saying. The lighting was dim and romantic, the kind of atmosphere that suggested a date rather than a casual meeting between old friends. Even in the poor lighting and from a distance, Dina could tell it was Veronica Hayes. The platinum blonde hair and elegant profile were unmistakable from the Instagram photos she had studied weeks earlier. The timestamp on the photo showed it had been taken just 20 minutes earlier. Dina stared at the image, her hands trembling slightly as she held her phone. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, and she felt nauseous with shock and betrayal. Marcus had told her he was staying home to work. He had blocked Veronica's number. He had assured her that his ex-girlfriend meant nothing to him. But here was photographic evidence that he had been lying to her face, for weeks. Dina stared at the photo for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, her mind racing through 1,000 different explanations and emotions. The pediatric ICU around her buzzed with its usual late-night activity, monitors beeping, nurses checking on patients, the soft murmur of concerned family members in the hallway, but it all felt distant and muffled, as if she were underwater. Her first instinct was to call Marcus immediately and demand an explanation. Her finger hovered over his contact for several seconds before she stopped herself. What if he was still with Veronica? What if confronting him now would only give him time to come up with a lie? And what if, her heart clenched at the thought, what if there was an innocent explanation that she was missing? Instead, she forwarded the photo to her best friend, Sarah Martinez, a fellow nurse who worked in the emergency department downstairs. Sarah had been Dina's maid of honor and had known Marcus almost as long as Dina had. If anyone could provide objective perspective, it would be her. The response came back within minutes. "What the hell? Where did you get this? Are you okay?" Dina quickly typed back, "Someone sent it to me anonymously. I'm at work until midnight. Can you meet me after my shift?" "Already leaving the ER. I'll be in the parking garage waiting for you. Don't do anything until we talk." The remaining 2 hours of Dina's shift passed in a blur of automatic responses and forced professionalism. She checked on her young patients, updated charts, and administered medications, but her mind was consumed by analyzing every detail of that photograph. The restaurant looked expensive and intimate. Marcus was wearing the navy button-down shirt he had given him for Christmas, which meant he had deliberately dressed up for this meeting. Veronica's body language was unmistakably flirtatious, and Marcus, she hated admitting this, didn't look uncomfortable with her proximity. But the more she thought about it, the more questions arose. Who took the photo? How did they get her phone number? Why would someone go out of their way to inform her about Marcus's alleged infidelity? And most puzzling of all, how could Marcus be having dinner with Veronica when he had supposedly blocked her number weeks ago? When her shift finally ended, Dina found Sarah pacing beside her Honda Civic in the nearly empty parking garage. Sarah Martinez was the kind of friend who would drop everything in a crisis. Fierce, loyal, and blessed with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that came from years of dealing with emergency room chaos. Her dark hair was still in the messy bun she wore during her shifts, and she was clutching a large coffee that suggested she had no intention of sleeping anytime soon. "Show me everything," Sarah said without preamble, sliding into the passenger seat of Dina's car. Dina handed over her phone and watched Sarah's expression darken as she studied the image. Sarah zoomed in on different parts of the photo, examining it with the methodical attention she usually reserved for X-rays and patient charts. "Okay, first things first, this definitely looks like Marcus, and based on your description, this is definitely the Instagram model ex-girlfriend." "Veronica Hayes," Dina supplied miserably. "Right, but there are some things about this that don't add up." Sarah held up the phone. "Look at the angle of this photo. Whoever took it was sitting across the restaurant with a clear line of sight to their table. This isn't some accidental shot or something someone took quickly with their phone. This was planned." Dina frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, someone followed them there specifically to document this meeting." Which raises the question, who knew they were going to be there? And why did that person want you to see this? It was a perspective Dina hadn't considered, and it added another layer of complexity to an already confusing situation. Maybe someone at the restaurant recognized Marcus and decided to be a good Samaritan.
Sarah shook her head. "Look at the quality of this photo. It's clear, well-composed, taken with a decent camera or phone. And look at the timestamp, 9:27 p.m. If this was some random person trying to help you out, would they really sit there for however long it took to get the perfect shot? Most people would either mind their own business or maybe take a quick, blurry photo as evidence." The implications of Sarah's analysis made Dina's stomach churn even more. "So you think someone is deliberately trying to break up my marriage?" "I think someone wanted you to see this photo very badly," Sarah said carefully. "Whether that's to break up your marriage or to warn you about your husband's behavior, I can't say. But this feels orchestrated." They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the situation settling between them. Finally, Sarah spoke again. "What do you want to do?" I don't know, Dina admitted. Part of me wants to go home and confront him right now. But what if he lies to my face? What if there's some explanation I'm not seeing? What if I'm being paranoid and this is exactly what it looks like, my husband cheating on me? Have you ever had any reason to suspect Marcus of being unfaithful? Sarah asked gently. Never, not once. He's been nothing but loving and honest with me since the day we met. That's what makes this so confusing. When Veronica first contacted him, he told me about it immediately. He blocked her number. He did everything right. So how did this happen? Sarah considered this information carefully. Maybe he unblocked her number and didn't tell you. Maybe she found another way to contact him. Maybe this meeting isn't what it appears to be. Or maybe, Dina said quietly, my husband is a better liar than I thought. The drive home to Scottsdale felt endless. Dina had decided to wait until morning to confront Marcus, reasoning that a conversation this important shouldn't happen when she was exhausted and emotional. Sarah had offered to let Dina stay at her place for the night, but Dina knew that avoiding the situation would only make it worse. When she finally pulled into their apartment complex parking lot, she noticed that Marcus's car was already there, which meant he was home from his supposed work session. The lights were on in their living room, and she could see the glow of his computer monitor through the window. Everything looked perfectly normal, exactly as it should if he had spent the evening working on his freelance project as planned. Dina sat in her car for several minutes, gathering the courage to go inside. She felt like she was about to cross a line that would fundamentally change their relationship, regardless of what explanation Marcus might offer. Once she walked through that door, their marriage would be divided into before this moment and after it. When she finally entered their apartment, Marcus looked up from his laptop with his usual warm smile. He was wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, his hair slightly mussed from running his hands through it while he worked, a habit she had always found endearing. Hey, babe, how was work? I know you had a rough day yesterday with Mrs. Patterson's little boy. He started to get up from the couch, presumably to give her the welcome home hug that was part of their nightly routine. It was fine, Dina said, her voice sounding strangely formal even to her own ears. She remained standing by the door, her purse still clutched in her hands. Marcus paused, clearly sensing that something was wrong. Everything okay? You seem different. This was the moment of truth. Dina could feel her heart pounding as she looked at her husband. This man she loved more than anyone in the world. This man who had never given her a reason to doubt him until tonight. She searched his face for any sign of guilt or deception, any tell that might reveal whether he was the faithful husband she thought he knew, or a skilled manipulator who had been playing a role for 2 years. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. His expression immediately shifted to concern. He closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. Of course, what's going on? Dina took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either clear up a terrible misunderstanding or confirm her worst fears. Where were you tonight? Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting that question. Here, working on the Henderson website redesign. I've been at it for hours. Want to see what I've got so far? He was looking directly into her eyes as he spoke, his expression open and guileless. Either he was telling the truth, or he was an exceptionally good liar. Dina realized she was about to find out which one it was.
Dina pulled out her phone with shaking hands and showed Marcus the photograph. She watched his face carefully as his eyes moved across the screen, looking for any flicker of recognition, guilt, or deception. What she saw instead was genuine confusion, followed by what appeared to be complete shock. "What the hell?" Marcus said, taking the phone from her hands to examine the image more closely. "Dina, this isn't real. I wasn't there. I've been here all evening." "The timestamp says 9:27 p.m., Marcus, less than 3 hours ago." Dina's voice was steadier than she felt, "and that's definitely you in the photo." Marcus stared at the image, his face growing pale. He zoomed in on different sections, his programmer's mind clearly analyzing every detail. "This looks like Cafe Luna in Old Town. But Dina, I swear to you, I have never been to that restaurant. I've never even heard of it before tonight." "Then how do you explain this?"
Dina asked, though part of her desperately wanted to believe him.
I can't explain it, Marcus said, running his hand through his hair in frustration. But I can prove I was here. He jumped up and hurried to his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Look, I've been logged into the work server since 6:30 p.m. The Henderson project has tracked timestamps for every change I made to the code. He turned the screen toward her, showing a detailed log of activity that appeared to span the entire evening. File modifications, code commits, even bathroom breaks were documented by the automatic tracking software his company used for freelance projects. And look, he pulled up another application. My fitness tracker shows I haven't left the apartment since this morning. See? No significant movement patterns, no car travel, nothing. Dina examined the evidence Marcus was presenting, feeling torn between relief and continued suspicion. The data seemed to support his story, but the photograph was so clear and convincing. Maybe you left your fitness tracker here, she suggested, hating herself for voicing the doubt. Then how did I drive to Old Town without my car keys? He asked, pulling his keys from his pocket. They've been sitting on the counter all evening. And look at this. He opened the parking app on his phone. Our assigned parking spot shows my car hasn't moved since I got home from work at 5:15. The evidence was compelling, but Dina's mind was reeling with the impossibility of the situation. Marcus, if you weren't at that restaurant tonight, then how do you explain a photo that clearly shows you there? I don't know, Marcus said, his voice filled with genuine bewilderment. But I'm going to find out. He grabbed his laptop and started typing rapidly. First, let me check something. You said Veronica contacted me weeks ago, right? And I blocked her number? Yes, you showed me when you did it. Marcus navigated to his phone settings and displayed his blocked contacts list. Veronica Hayes' number was indeed there, blocked since the day after her initial message. So either she's using a different number, or someone is pretending to be her, or... He trailed off, a new thought clearly occurring to him. Or what? Or someone is using sophisticated technology to create fake evidence. Marcus's expression was grim. I work in tech, Dina. I know what's possible with deep fake technology and photo manipulation. This could be a completely fabricated image. The possibility hadn't occurred to Dina, and it offered a glimmer of hope in what felt like an impossible situation. But who would do that, and why? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Marcus's jaw was set with determination. First thing tomorrow, I'm calling Casa Luna to see if they have security footage from last night. If I was never there, their cameras will prove it. And if you were there? Dina asked quietly. He met her eyes directly. Then I've either lost my mind or someone has been impersonating me, because I swear to you on everything I hold dear that I have not left this apartment since I got home from work today. That night, neither of them slept well. They lay in bed together, but the easy intimacy that usually characterized their evenings was replaced by tension and unresolved questions. Dina found herself studying Marcus's profile in the darkness, wondering if she really knew the man she had married. Marcus, for his part, spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, his mind working through the technical possibilities of how such a convincing fake could have been created. The next morning, Marcus was on the phone with Cafe Luna before Dina had even finished her coffee. She listened to his side of the conversation while getting ready for another shift at the hospital, trying to gauge from his tone and responses what he was learning. Yes, I understand you need to verify my identity. My name is Marcus Rivera. I'm calling about security footage from last night around 9:30 p.m. Yes, I'll hold. The wait stretched on for nearly 10 minutes before Marcus spoke again. You're absolutely certain? There's no chance your cameras missed anything? Okay, and you've checked the entire evening. I see. Thank you for your time. He hung up and turned to Dina with a mixture of relief and deeper confusion on his face. Their security footage shows every person who entered and left the restaurant last night between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. I was not there, Dina. The manager reviewed it twice to be sure. Dina felt a strange combination of vindication and bewilderment. So the photo is fake? It has to be, Marcus said, but it's an incredibly sophisticated fake. Look at this. He pulled up the image again on his phone, examining it with fresh eyes. The lighting on my face matches the restaurant's ambiance perfectly. The angle and perspective are consistent with someone sitting across the dining room. Even the reflection in Veronica's wine glass looks natural. "Could you create something like this?" Dina asked. Marcus shook his head slowly. "Not at this level of sophistication. This would require professional-grade software and considerable skill. We're talking about someone with serious technical expertise and a lot of time on their hands." As the morning progressed, Marcus threw himself into investigating the situation with the same methodical approach he brought to debugging complex code problems. He reached out to his contacts in the tech industry, researching companies that specialized in digital forensics and photo authentication. Meanwhile, Dina tried to focus on her work, but found herself constantly checking her phone for updates. The breakthrough came around noon when Marcus called her with excitement in his voice. "I found something. Remember how the photo came from an unknown number? I ran it through a reverse lookup service. The number is registered to a burner phone purchased with cash at a convenience store in Tempe last month." "So someone planned this in advance," Dina said, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Exactly. This isn't some impulsive act of revenge or a random attempt to cause trouble. Someone has been planning this for weeks, maybe longer." That afternoon, Marcus took a half-day from work to visit a digital forensics expert recommended by a colleague. Dr. Jennifer Walsh operated a small but highly regarded lab that specialized in authenticating digital evidence for legal cases. Her office was located in a nondescript building in downtown Phoenix, filled with high-end computer equipment and monitors displaying various technical analyses. Dr. Walsh, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, examined the photo with professional interest. "This is quite sophisticated work," she said, after running it through several authentication programs, but not perfect. She pointed to areas on her computer screen that highlighted subtle inconsistencies invisible to the untrained eye. The compression artifacts don't match between the foreground and background elements. The metadata has been stripped and replaced, which is a red flag. Most telling, though, is this. She zoomed in on Marcus's left hand in the photo. See how the redding ring catches the light here? The reflection pattern doesn't match the ambient lighting in the restaurant. "So it's definitely fake?" Marcus asked. "Without question. This image has been digitally manipulated using advanced deepfake technology combined with traditional photo editing techniques. Whoever created this had access to high-quality source photos of both individuals and considerable technical skill." Armed with this professional confirmation, Marcus felt vindicated, but also deeply disturbed. "Dr. Walsh, in your experience, what kind of person goes to these lengths to create false evidence?" Dr. Walsh's expression grew serious. "In the cases I've worked, this level of sophistication usually indicates either a professional trying to destroy someone's reputation or an individual with a severe psychological obsession. The amount of time, money, and technical expertise required suggests this person is extremely motivated to cause damage to your relationship." When Marcus shared Dr. Walsh's findings with Dina that evening, she felt a complex mix of relief and fear. Relief that her husband hadn't betrayed her, but fear about what kind of enemy they had apparently made without even knowing it. "So, someone is actively trying to break us up," Dina said, sitting heavily on their couch. "But who? And why?" "The only connection I can think of is Veronica," Marcus said. "She's the only ex-girlfriend I've had who might have reason to be upset about my marriage, but this level of technical manipulation, it doesn't match what I remember about her personality." "People change," Dina pointed out, "and you said yourself that you haven't spoken to her in 6 years. Maybe she's developed new skills, or maybe she's working with someone who has these capabilities." Marcus nodded grimly. "Dr. Walsh gave me the contact information for a private investigator who specializes in cases involving digital harassment and stalking. She said if someone is willing to go this far to interfere with our marriage, they're unlikely to stop with just one fake photo." The realization hit them both simultaneously. This was probably just the beginning. If someone had invested this much effort into creating one piece of false evidence, they likely had more planned. Their marriage, their trust, their peace of mind, everything they had built together was under attack by an invisible enemy who had demonstrated both technical sophistication and a willingness to invest significant resources in causing them harm. "What do we do now?" Dina asked, reaching for Marcus's hand. "We fight back," Marcus said, squeezing her fingers gently. "We figure out who's doing this, and we stop them before they can do any more damage." That night, for the first time since receiving the fake photo, Dina felt like she and Marcus were truly on the same team again. The crisis had initially driven a wedge between them, but now they had a common enemy and a shared goal. They spent hours discussing their plan of action, reviewing everything they knew about Veronica Hayes, and preparing for what might come next. Neither of them realized that by deciding to investigate further, they were walking directly into a trap that had been months in the making. Their unknown tormentor had anticipated their every move, and the fake restaurant photo was merely the opening gambit in a much larger and more sinister game.
The private investigator Marcus contacted was named David Chen, a former FBI cybercrime specialist who now ran his own digital security firm from a modest office in central Phoenix. When they met him 3 days after the fake photo incident, Chen's serious demeanor and maniacal questions made it clear they were dealing with someone who had seen cases like this before. "The sophistication level you're describing suggests we're not dealing with an amateur," Chen said, reviewing Dr. Walsh's technical report. "Creating convincing deepfakes requires specific software, hardware, and expertise. More importantly, it requires detailed source material, multiple high-quality photos of both subjects from various angles." Marcus and Dina exchanged glances. "What kind of source material?" Dina asked. "Hundreds of photos, ideally. Social media profiles, professional headshots, candid pictures from multiple lighting conditions. The more images available, the more convincing the final product." Chen leaned forward. "Have either of you noticed any unusual photography activity? Someone taking pictures at social events? Old friends suddenly asking for updated photos?" They both shook their heads, but Chen's questions planted a seed of paranoia that would grow over the following days. Who had been taking their pictures? How long had someone been collecting material to use against them? Chen's investigation began immediately. But what happened next made their situation exponentially worse. 2 days after their meeting with the private investigator, Dina received a phone call at work that nearly sent her into a panic attack. "Mrs. Rivera?" The voice belonged to Margaret Foster, the nursing supervisor. "Could you please come to my office immediately?" Dina's stomach dropped. She had never been called to the supervisor's office unexpectedly, and the formal tone suggested serious trouble. As she walked down the hospital corridor, her mind raced through every possible reason for the summons, none of them good. Margaret Foster was a stern woman in her early 60s who had been with Children's Medical Center for over 30 years. Her office was decorated with commendations and photos from various hospital events, but her expression as Dina entered was anything but celebratory. "Please sit down," Margaret said, closing the door behind them. "I've received some concerning information that I need to discuss with you." She opened a folder on her desk and withdrew several printed photographs. Dina's blood turned cold as she recognized herself in the images, but these weren't photos from her personal life. These appeared to be taken at the hospital, showing her in various compromising situations with Dr. James Morrison, one of the attending physicians in the pediatric department. The photos showed what appeared to be intimate moments. Dina and Dr. Morrison standing very close together in a supply closet, her hand on his chest, the two of them in what looked like an embrace in an empty patient room, Dina apparently kissing Dr. Morrison in the hospital parking garage late at night. "These images were sent to me anonymously this morning," Margaret said, her voice carefully controlled, "along with a note claiming that you've been having an inappropriate relationship with Dr. Morrison that could compromise patient care and violate hospital policy." Dina felt like she was going to be sick. "Mrs. Foster, these photos are fake. I have never had any kind of inappropriate relationship with Dr. Morrison or any other doctor here. I'm happily married." "I understand this is a serious accusation," Margaret replied. "However, these images appear quite convincing, and I'm required to investigate any potential violations of our professional conduct policies." "But they're not real!" Dina's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. "Someone is creating fake photos to destroy my reputation. My husband and I are already dealing with a similar situation."
Margaret's eyebrows rose. Similar situation? Dina quickly explained about the restaurant photo and Dr. Walsh's forensic analysis proving it was a deepfake. Margaret listened with growing concern, making notes as Dina spoke. "This is quite troubling," Margaret said when Dina finished. "If someone is creating false evidence to damage both your marriage and your career, that suggests a coordinated harassment campaign." "What happens now?" Dina asked, dreading the answer. "I'll need to speak with Dr. Morrison to get his perspective on these allegations. In the meantime, I'm required to place you on administrative leave, pending a full investigation." The words hit Dina like a physical blow. "Administrative leave? But I haven't done anything wrong." "I understand your frustration, but until we can verify that these images are fabricated, I have to protect both you and the hospital from potential liability issues." Margaret's tone softened slightly. "If these images are indeed fake, as you claim, we'll get to the bottom of it and you'll be fully reinstated with back pay." Dina left the hospital that afternoon feeling humiliated and helpless. The other nurses had clearly heard about the meeting with Margaret, and she could feel their curious and judgmental stares as she cleaned out her locker. Some colleagues she had considered friends suddenly seemed to be avoiding eye contact, while others whispered amongst themselves as she passed. When she arrived home, Marcus was already there, having left work early after she called him in tears. He held her as she sobbed out the story of the fake hospital photos and her suspension, his own anger building as he realized the scope of their attackers' campaign.
"This person isn't just trying to break up our marriage," Marcus said grimly. "They're trying to destroy your entire life." The next few days brought a cascade of additional attacks that demonstrated the methodical nature of their tormentors' plan. Marcus's boss at Innovate Tech Solutions received an anonymous email containing fabricated evidence that Marcus had been stealing proprietary code and selling it to competitors. The evidence was sophisticated enough that Marcus was immediately placed under investigation by the company's legal department. Their landlord received a fake police report claiming their apartment was being used for illegal drug activities, complete with fabricated evidence and false witness statements. Although the report was quickly proven false when police found no evidence of any wrongdoing, it created enough suspicion that their lease renewal was suddenly in jeopardy. Most devastating of all, both sets of parents received packages containing printed copies of various fake photos and documents, along with detailed letters claiming that Marcus and Dina's marriage was a sham designed to cover up their respective affairs and illegal activities. Marcus's mother called in tears, begging him to explain what was happening. Dina's father, a protective man who had always been suspicious of anyone dating his daughter, arrived unannounced at their apartment, demanding answers. The family relationships that had taken years to build were suddenly strained by doubt and confusion. "It's like someone has studied our entire lives and figured out exactly how to cause maximum damage," Dina said during one of their nightly strategy sessions with David Chen. They had moved these meetings to the investigator's office after realizing that their apartment might be under surveillance. Chen nodded gravely. "Whoever is doing this has invested considerable time in reconnaissance. They know your work schedules, your family relationships, your social connections. This level of targeted harassment typically indicates a personal vendetta rather than random malicious activity." "So it's definitely someone we know?" Marcus asked. "Or someone connected to someone you know," Chen corrected. "The key is figuring out who has both the motivation and the technical capability to orchestrate something this complex." Their suspect list was frustratingly short. Marcus had very few ex-girlfriends, and none of the others had ever shown signs of instability or vindictiveness. Dina's romantic history was similarly uncomplicated. Neither of them had professional enemies or had been involved in any significant conflicts that might inspire this level of revenge. "What about Veronica Hayes?" Dina asked. "Even though the connection seems obvious, maybe that's exactly why we should look closer." Chen had already begun investigating Veronica's background, and what he discovered was both eliminating and troubling.
Veronica Hayes completed her communications degree at UCLA, but she also took several advanced courses in digital media production and graphic design. After graduation, she worked for 3 different marketing agencies specializing in social media manipulation and viral content creation. So she would have the technical skills? Marcus asked. Potentially, yes. But more importantly, her employment history shows a pattern of job terminations related to interpersonal conflicts and boundary violations. 2 of her former employers specifically cited her inability to accept rejection and her tendency to harbor grudges against colleagues who had slighted her. The psychological profile that emerged from Chen's investigation painted a picture of someone who appeared successful and accomplished on the surface, but had a history of disproportionate responses to perceived rejections. Veronica had been fired from her most recent position just 2 months before her initial text to Marcus, ostensibly for creating a hostile work environment after a male colleague had declined her romantic advances. He fits the profile, Chen concluded. Intelligent, technically capable, recently unemployed with time on her hands, and a documented history of problematic behavior when relationships don't go her way. But proving Veronica's involvement was entirely different from identifying her as a suspect. The fake evidence being created was too sophisticated to trace directly, and Veronica was careful to maintain plausible deniability. When Chen attempted to interview her, she claimed complete ignorance about any harassment campaign and even provided what appeared to be a solid alibi for the night the restaurant photo was supposedly taken. She's been planning this for months, Chen told them during a late-night meeting. Every piece of fake evidence is carefully crafted to be just believable enough to cause doubt, but not so obvious that it can be easily debunked. She's trying to death by 1,000 cuts your relationship and your reputations. The constant stress was beginning to take its toll on both Marcus and Dina. The investigation was expensive, draining their savings account that had been earmarked for their house down payment. The suspension from work meant Dina was bringing in no income while still facing mounting legal bills. Marcus's productivity at work suffered as he spent increasing time dealing with the false allegations against him. Worst of all, the sustained attacks were beginning to create exactly the kind of tension and doubt that their tormentor had intended. Even though they both intellectually understood that they were being manipulated, the constant crisis management and financial stress were straining their relationship in ways they had never experienced before. "She's winning," Dina said one evening as they reviewed Chen's latest report. "Even though we know the evidence is fake, it's still destroying our lives." Marcus looked exhausted, his usual neat appearance showing the effects of weeks of stress. "We can't give up now. Chen thinks he's close to finding the source of the fake photos. Once we can prove Veronica is behind this, we can fight back." But even as Marcus spoke with determination, both of them wondered privately if their marriage could survive much more of this psychological warfare. Their unknown enemy had demonstrated both patience and ruthlessness, and it was becoming clear that the attacks would continue escalating until someone was completely destroyed. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source 3 weeks into their nightmare. Marcus's younger sister, Elena, a sharp-witted law student at the University of Arizona, had been helping them organize documentation for potential legal action when she noticed something that everyone else had missed. "Marcus, can you pull up Veronica's Instagram again?" Elena asked during one of their weekend strategy sessions at her small apartment near campus. "I want to check something." Elena had always possessed an analytical mind that rivaled her brother's, but applied to human behavior rather than computer code. While Marcus excelled at debugging software problems, Elena had a gift for identifying inconsistencies in people's stories and motivations. "Look at this post from March 15th, Elena said, pointing to a photo of Veronica at a Phoenix art gallery opening. "She's tagged at the Herberger Theater Center downtown. Now look at this one from March 22nd. She's at the Musical Instrument Museum in North Phoenix." "So?" Marcus asked, not immediately seeing the significance. "So, she's been systematically visiting locations all over the Phoenix metropolitan area, almost like she's mapping out the city. But here's the interesting part." Elena scrolled to several earlier posts. These locations correspond almost exactly to places where you and Dina have checked in on social media over the past year. Dina felt a chill run down her spine as Elena's observations sank in. You think she's been following our social media posts and visiting the same places? More than that, Elena said, pulling up a notes app where she had been tracking patterns. I've been analyzing the timestamps on all her Phoenix posts against your guys' social media activity. She's not just visiting these places randomly, she's going there within days or sometimes hours of when you've posted about being there. The implications were terrifying. Marcus immediately opened his own Instagram and began cross-referencing dates with Elena's notes. The correlation was unmistakable. 3 days after Marcus posted a photo from their favorite coffee shop in Old Town, Veronica had posted a picture from the same location. A week after Dina shared photos from their anniversary dinner at a rooftop restaurant, Veronica had posted a sunset view from that exact same rooftop. "She's been stalking us for months," Dina whispered, the reality of their situation hitting her with full force. But Elena wasn't finished with her analysis. There's something else. Look at the metadata on some of these posts. She pointed to details that required zooming in on each photo. Several of these images were posted hours or even days after they were supposedly taken. She's been backlogging content to make it look like she's been in Phoenix longer than she actually has. This discovery led David Chen to dig deeper into Veronica's recent activities, and what he found through his professional contacts was disturbing enough to warrant involving law enforcement. Veronica Hayes had not simply moved back to Phoenix for work as her initial message had implied. She had been systematically planning her return for months, using her marketing background to research Marcus and Dina's lives in exhaustive detail. Chen's investigation revealed that Veronica had created multiple fake social media profiles over the past 6 months, using them to gather information about the couple's routines, relationships, and vulnerabilities. She had even applied for jobs at businesses frequented by Marcus and Dina, apparently trying to position herself in their daily orbit. The level of premeditation here is extraordinary, Chen reported during a tense meeting in his office. She didn't just wake up one day and decide to cause trouble. She's been building toward this for the better part of a year. The investigation also uncovered the source of Veronica's technical capabilities. After being fired from her most recent marketing job, she had spent 2 months taking intensive courses in digital media manipulation and artificial intelligence applications. The courses were offered by a specialized training company in Los Angeles that catered to entertainment industry professionals who needed to create realistic special effects on limited budgets. Essentially, she taught herself professional-grade deception techniques. The combination of her marketing background, her new technical skills, and her apparent obsession with your relationship created the perfect storm. Armed with this information, Chen was able to trace the purchase of the burner phone used to send the fake restaurant photo. Security footage from the Tempe convenience store showed a woman matching Veronica's description making the cash purchase, though she had been wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses that partially obscured her face.
More importantly, Chen's contacts in the telecommunications industry helped him discover something that would prove crucial to their case. The anonymous messages weren't just coming from burner phones. They were being routed through a sophisticated spoofing service that made them appear to originate from different numbers each time. Professional stalkers often use these services to avoid detection, Chen explained. But they leave digital footprints if you know where to look. We're getting close to tracing the actual source. Meanwhile, the attacks on Marcus and Dina's lives continued with increasing intensity and creativity. Their car insurance company received a fake police report claiming Marcus had been involved in a hit-and-run accident while driving under the influence. The report was detailed enough to trigger an immediate investigation and the suspension of their policy. Their credit union received fabricated evidence that Dina had been embezzling money from the hospital, leading to the freezing of their accounts pending verification. Even though the evidence was quickly proven false, the temporary loss of access to their funds during an already expensive crisis pushed them to the brink of financial disaster. The psychological toll was becoming unbearable. Dina found herself jumping at every unexpected phone call, dreading each new revelation of fake evidence designed to destroy her reputation. Marcus became increasingly withdrawn, spending hours each night reviewing their digital security and checking for new attacks. Their relationship, while still fundamentally strong, showed signs of strain under the constant pressure. Simple conversations became tense as they second-guessed every aspect of their lives, wondering what new ammunition their tormentor might use against them. The easy laughter and spontaneous affection that had characterized their marriage was replaced by hypervigilance and exhaustion. "I keep thinking about what our life was like just a month ago," Dina said one evening as they sat on their couch, both too tired to cook dinner. "We were so happy, so naive. We thought the biggest problem we might face was saving enough money for a house down payment." "We'll get back there," Marcus said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Chen says he's making progress. Once we can prove what Veronica is doing and get her arrested, this will all be over." But even as Marcus spoke, they both knew that some damage was irreversible. Dina's colleagues at the hospital looked at her differently now, despite the administration's eventual acknowledgement that the photos were fabricated. The rumors and whispers would likely follow her for months or years. Marcus's reputation at work had similarly suffered, even though the accusations against him had been proven false. The breakthrough they needed came from an unexpected vulnerability in Veronica's otherwise carefully planned campaign. In her eagerness to create more convincing fake evidence, she had begun using increasingly sophisticated deepfake software that required significant computational resources. Chen's contacts in the cybersecurity community had been monitoring for unusual activity on the specialized servers typically used for this type of digital manipulation. She's been renting time on high-end graphics processing servers through a cloud computing service, Chen reported excitedly during their next meeting. The payment trail leads back to a cryptocurrency wallet, but cryptocurrency transactions aren't as anonymous as most people think. The technical details were complex, but the implications were clear. They finally had a direct financial connection between Veronica and the creation of the fake evidence. Chen worked with federal investigators who specialized in cybercrime to trace the cryptocurrency payments back to their source. "It's going to take time," Chen warned them. "These investigations can take weeks or months to complete, but we finally have her." However, as they waited for the financial investigation to conclude, Veronica apparently sensed that her scheme was in danger of being exposed. The attacks became more desperate and more frequent, as if she was trying to inflict maximum damage before her window of opportunity closed. Fake evidence began appearing at an alarming rate. Doctored financial records suggesting Marcus had been embezzling from his employer, fabricated medical records claiming Dina had been stealing prescription medications, even fake legal documents suggesting they were both involved in an elaborate insurance fraud scheme. Each new piece of false evidence required time, money, and energy to disprove. Even though they now understood the pattern and could quickly identify the fake materials, the constant need to defend themselves was exhausting and expensive. "She's getting sloppy," Chen observed as they reviewed the latest batch of fabricated documents. "These newer fakes aren't as technically sophisticated as her earlier work. She's rushing, which means she's probably feeling pressure." The pressure, as they would soon discover, was coming from an unexpected source. Veronica's elaborate revenge scheme was about to collide with the one thing she hadn't anticipated: the phone company's internal security investigation that would expose not just her harassment campaign, but the full scope of her obsession with destroying Marcus and Dina's marriage. The truth, when it finally emerged, would be more shocking than anything they had imagined, revealing a level of premeditation and psychological manipulation that went far beyond what even the private investigator had suspected. But for now, they could only prepare for what felt like an inevitable final confrontation, hoping that their evidence would be enough to stop Veronica before she could inflict any more damage on their lives. The phone call that would finally bring justice came at 7:23 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday morning in late May. David Chen's voice was unusually animated when Marcus answered, immediately putting the call on speaker so Dina could hear the news they had been desperately waiting for. "We got her," Chen said without preamble. The federal cybercrime unit just finished tracing the cryptocurrency payments, and it gets better. Verizon's internal fraud department contacted the FBI yesterday about suspicious activity on their network that directly connects to our case. What Chen explained next was more elaborate and damning than anything they had imagined. Veronica hadn't just been creating fake photos and documents. She had been systematically infiltrating telecommunications networks to access and manipulate phone records, text message logs, and even voicemail systems. The Verizon investigation had begun independently when their automated security systems detected unusual access patterns to customer accounts. Someone had been using sophisticated social engineering techniques to gain unauthorized access to phone records for multiple customers, including Marcus and Dina. The intrusions were so carefully executed that they had initially gone unnoticed, but the cumulative pattern had eventually triggered fraud alerts. She wasn't just creating fake evidence, Chen explained. She was accessing real phone company databases to alter your actual communication records. If her plan had worked, she could have shown investigators modified versions of your real text messages and call logs that would have been nearly impossible to dispute. Federal investigators had been able to trace the unauthorized access back to Veronica through a combination of technical forensics and old-fashioned detective work. She had used her marketing background to research Verizon employees on professional networking sites, then crafted elaborate pretexts to convince customer service representatives to provide her with account access. Her communications degree had taught her exactly how to sound authoritative and legitimate when making these requests. The phone company has complete records of every unauthorized access attempt: dates, times, which accounts were targeted, what information was viewed or modified. It's a federal prosecutor's dream case. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. When FBI agents executed a search warrant on Veronica's temporary apartment in Phoenix, they discovered a level of obsession that disturbed even experienced law enforcement officials. Her living space had been converted into what investigators described as a shrine to surveillance, with printed photos of Marcus and Dina covering every wall. The photos weren't just pulled from social media. Many appeared to have been taken secretly over months of stalking. Images of them grocery shopping, walking their dog, visiting Marcus's parents, attending Dina's cousin's wedding. Veronica had been documenting their lives with the thoroughness of a professional investigator, collecting material for her harassment campaign. More disturbing were the detailed written plans investigators found, outlining a systematic strategy to destroy every aspect of Marcus and Dina's relationship and professional lives. The fake restaurant photo had just been the opening move in a campaign that was intended to escalate over months, gradually increasing in severity until one or both of them suffered complete social and professional destruction. Phase 1. Plant seeds of doubt about fidelity, read one handwritten note that investigators found. Phase 2. Attack professional reputations separately to create financial stress. Phase 3. Target family relationships and social connections. Phase 4. Create legal jeopardy, requiring expensive defense. The notes revealed that Veronica had spent over 8 months planning her revenge, using her unemployment period after being fired to dedicate herself full-time to studying Marcus and Dina's lives. She had taken the deepfake courses not just to create fake photos, but to prepare for what she called Project Destruction, a systematic campaign to eliminate what she viewed as Marcus's stolen happiness. Most chilling of all were the psychological assessments Veronica had written about both Marcus and Dina, analyzing their personalities and relationships to identify the most effective pressure points. She had correctly identified that Dina's trusting nature would make her vulnerable to doubt once suspicion was planted, and that Marcus's logical mind would make him susceptible to elaborate technical deceptions.
She studied us like lab rats, Dina said when Chen shared the investigators' findings. She knew exactly how to hurt us most effectively. The evidence against Veronica was overwhelming and undeniable. In addition to the unauthorized network access and harassment campaign, investigators discovered that she had committed multiple federal crimes, including identity theft, wire fraud, and computer intrusion. The fake evidence she had created violated numerous state laws related to defamation and criminal harassment. When federal agents arrested Veronica at her apartment, she initially attempted to claim that she was the victim of a frame-up orchestrated by Marcus and Dina. However, her story fell apart completely when investigators presented her with the physical evidence from her apartment and the detailed digital trail of her activities. Faced with irrefutable proof of her crimes, Veronica finally confessed to the full scope of her harassment campaign. What she revealed during her interrogatory shocked even the experienced federal agents conducting the interview. Veronica's obsession with Marcus had begun years before their college breakup, when she had convinced herself that they were destined to be together permanently. When Marcus had gently ended their relationship to focus on his studies, she had interpreted his kindness as a sign that he still loved her, but was confused about his feelings. For 6 years, she had monitored his social media activity from Los Angeles, convincing herself that his subsequent relationships were merely distractions from his true feelings for her. When Marcus married Dina, Veronica's delusion had crystallized into a belief that she needed to rescue him from what she viewed as a manipulative woman who had stolen her rightful place. She genuinely believed that once she destroyed our marriage, Marcus would realize he had made a mistake and return to her, Chen explained after reviewing the interrogation transcripts. In her mind, she wasn't destroying a happy relationship. She was correcting a cosmic injustice. The revelation of Veronica's mental state was both terrifying and oddly vindicating. Marcus and Dina had done nothing to deserve the attacks against them except fall in love and build a happy life together. They had been targeted by someone whose grip on reality was so tenuous that she had convinced herself that elaborate criminal activity was justified by her romantic delusions. The legal consequences for Veronica were swift and severe. Federal prosecutors, armed with overwhelming evidence and a clear pattern of premeditated criminal activity, charged her with multiple felonies that carried potential sentences totaling over 20 years in prison. Her expensive defense attorneys quickly realized that fighting the charges would be futile and began negotiating for a plea deal. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed that Veronica suffered from a severe personality disorder, characterized by obsessive thinking, delusional beliefs about relationships, and an inability to accept rejection. The evaluation recommended extensive psychiatric treatment as part of any sentence, suggesting that her criminal behavior had been driven by genuine mental illness rather than simple malice. For Marcus and Dina, the confirmation that Veronica would face serious legal consequences brought a sense of relief they hadn't felt in months, but the healing process would take much longer than the investigation had. Dina's reinstatement at the hospital came with a formal apology from the administration and an offer of additional vacation time to recover from the ordeal. Her colleagues, once they understood the full scope of what had happened, rallied around her with support and encouragement. The bonds she had built through years of dedicated patient care proved stronger than the temporary damage caused by fake accusations. Marcus's situation at work was similarly resolved, though it took several weeks for the company's legal department to complete their review of the fabricated evidence. His reputation was ultimately enhanced rather than damaged when his colleagues learned about his grace under pressure and his commitment to proving the truth rather than simply denying the accusations. The financial costs of their ordeal were substantial. Legal fees, investigation expenses, and lost income totaling over $30,000. However, their attorneys advised them that they had strong grounds for a civil lawsuit that could recover not only their expenses, but additional damages for the emotional distress and reputational harm they had suffered. Perhaps most importantly, the crisis had tested their relationship in ways they never could have anticipated, and proven that their foundation was strong enough to withstand even the most sophisticated attacks.
The trust between them had been strained, but never broken, and their communication skills had been forged into something even more resilient by the necessity of navigating an unprecedented situation together. We're different people now than we were 3 months ago, Dina reflected, as they sat on their balcony one evening, watching another Arizona sunset. We've been through something that would destroy a lot of marriages, but somehow we came out stronger. Marcus nutted, reaching for her hand. It's like we had to prove to ourselves that what we have is real. No amount of fake evidence or manipulation could change the fact that we chose each other, and we keep choosing each other every day. The restraining order against Veronica would remain in place for 5 years, with provisions for automatic renewal if she attempted any contact. Her plea agreement included a requirement for ongoing psychiatric treatment and prohibited her from using social media or digital communication platforms, except under strict supervision. As summer arrived and they approached their second wedding anniversary, Marcus and Dina found themselves looking toward the future with hard-won optimism. They had learned valuable lessons about digital security, the importance of documenting their lives, and the strength of their partnership when facing external threats. The house they eventually bought that fall included a sophisticated security system and careful privacy protections, but it also featured the sunny garden where Dina could expand her plant collection and the home office where Marcus could continue building his career. They had emerged from their ordeal with a deeper appreciation for the ordinary moments of happiness that someone had tried so hard to destroy. Their story became a cautionary tale shared by law enforcement agencies training officers about cyberstalking and digital harassment cases. But for Marcus and Dina, it was simply the chapter of their lives that taught them exactly how much their love was worth fighting for. Veronica Hayes was ultimately sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with requirements for extensive psychiatric treatment and permanent restrictions on her digital activities upon release. Her delusions about Marcus cost her freedom, her career, and any chance of the relationship she had convinced herself she deserved. The fake evidence she had created with such technical skill was preserved as exhibits in federal court, serving as proof that love built on truth and trust will always triumph over deception, no matter how sophisticated the lies might be. Marcus and Dina's marriage had survived the ultimate test, emerging stronger and more precious than ever before.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.